Well, hi, friends. Welcome to another Level Up and Matto Foundation webinar. We are so excited you have joined us for today's webinar. It's on social media and self-esteem. And our special guest is Missy Heilman. If you haven't heard of her, be prepared to be blown away by her impactful work. It's going to be a really remarkable discussion. And as we go through this discussion, please feel free to add to it in the chat, which will be open during this if you're watching this live. And I want you all to know too that this webinar is part of a free monthly learning series that is presented in partnership by Dakota Medical Foundation, Level Up Fargo, and the Matto Foundation. Together, we're working to delay, decrease, and defeat substance abuse and addiction. These are held the first Thursday of every month. So if you want to mark your calendar, first Thursday every month at noon, we'll be featuring local experts like Missy to address youth substance abuse, the challenge young people face, and how you can best support them in reaching their full potential. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, or just a caring adult into community, this series is for you. So be sure to follow Level Up Fargo and Matto Foundation on Facebook for upcoming webinar announcements. All right, so let's get into it. I'm so excited today to introduce you to our special guest, Missy Heilman. She's the founder and executive director of Biogirls, a self-esteem building program for girls grades 2 to 6. Missy works to ensure all decisions are mission-centric, and she serves as the chief program architect. It's amazing what she has done, and you're going to learn all about that. And also, she's going to give us some tangible things we can all do to help make sure that we are providing a bright future for our young girls. So she directs the vision of the organization, and what started out as a dream to be a mentor for young girls has now blossomed into thousands of girls that are increasing their self-esteem annually. Thousands of girls BioGirl is impacting. And I want you all just to know a bit about Missy. She has a diverse background in business management and marketing, which makes her like a triple threat when it comes to making a social impact. And so she is remarkable. She's got a bachelor's degree in exercise science and nutrition from UND. We like to call that the Harvard of the North, and an MBA from NDSU. She's the mom to 3 girls, a wife to a husband, Tom, who is a thrill-seeking mountain biking aficionado who does push Missy outside of her comfort zone anytime they are on 2 wheels. She's often described as fearless, and her favorite piece of advice as a person who's fearless is to young and old alike is to never feel failure. It is not to fear failure. And her favorite quote is, "She is clothed with strength and dignity and laughs without fear of the future." And that's from Proverbs 31:25. Missy Heilman, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Scott. My pleasure to be here.
Well, just to dive right in, let's just start. So everybody that's watching this live and the recording later, could you tell us a little bit about Biogirls?
Yeah, as you said, our mission is to improve the self-esteem of adolescent girls through empowerment of self and service to others. We offer a 12-week program that combines small group mentoring, life skills curriculum, and physical activity to improve that self-esteem. We are evidence-based, so we have a team of researchers that work on our behalf to measure that self-esteem improvement over the course of the program, and we have proven that it works. We are in 5 states. We are impacting about 1,500 girls annually, and over the last 8 years, we have impacted nearly 7,000 girls.
Well, and I think that's one thing, just remarkable before we jump into this that I think people should know is that you're creating your own curriculum. This isn't something that exists that you're merely copying and implementing. You're developing curriculum that is evidence-based. So really, I just want our audience to know what Missy is leading, is absolutely revolutionary in terms of how it's impacting the lives of young girls and the families associated with them. So before we jump into today's landscape, Missy, any other things you'd like people to know about Biogirls?
Yeah, I think on the topic of the curriculum, we really focus on 4 key areas in our 2nd through 6th grade curriculum. The first being mental wellness. So we talk about stress and anxiety and healthy ways to deal with those things. We help girls to learn skills to build positive, healthy relationships. Of course, at this age, we're primarily focused on friendships, but those are the building blocks to healthy relationships with significant others down the road. A big pillar of our curriculum is spreading kindness. So being kind to yourself. We are our own worst critics sometimes. And so we give the girls tools to identify that inner voice and how to change that inner dialogue. We are spreading kindness within peer groups. So again, providing skills and giving girls practice in how to be inclusive and kind to everyone. And then of course, spreading kindness throughout our community. Every Biogirls group engages in a service project within their community. In fact, just last night, we had a group at the food pantry, at Great Plains Food Bank, helping out with some of their needs there. And then the fourth area is leadership, teaching leadership skills, things like taking healthy risks and, how to be a positive leader in their community or within their peer groups. And so those are the things that we focus on at this age. And we often get the question, like, why elementary age kids? Why not middle school? Why not high school? And the research shows that actually girls' self-esteem is highest in third grade and then plummets to a low by sixth grade. And so we're working with girls during this time, this very transformative time when, we're typically seeing a decline in self-esteem. We're trying to maintain that healthy level of self-esteem. At the same time, we're providing skills. So we always say that they have a self-esteem toolbox where they can access the things that they're learning when they are navigating social situations or encounters as they continue to grow. So I mentioned we get asked, why not middle school? Why not high school? And in typical Biogirls fashion, I can say we're not yet impacting that demographic. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit more later, but we're in active development of a teen program, hoping to launch next year.
Well, that's remarkable. And this visual of a self-esteem toolkit, I mean, as a parent, as a coach, as an educator, as a caring citizen, well, I think this is something we're all looking for right now is, what can we train young minds to do and also, benefit from as adults. And, one more question, I think, before we dive right in, Missy, is what led to the burning question in your heart or desire that led to Biogirls? I think for our audience watching this, you did something really special, which is you saw something and you got off the sidelines and you got involved. And I think that's important for all of us to hear about.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, just my personality, just get her done. But I had some really positive mentors and role models growing up. And as an adult could reflect on the fact that they played a big part in my life. And I was looking for a way to be a mentor to other girls in our community. And I had reached out to a couple of organizations and never got a response. And so I started thinking about what it would be if I were to start something. And I mean, I had no vision of what Biogirls is today. I mean, I literally was thinking of having a group at the church that we are members of. But I knew I wanted to incorporate mentoring. Physical activity has been a really important part of my life and has helped me with stress management and even opening doors and opportunities for me. And then I'm the mother of, well, at the time, 2 young daughters. Now I have 3. And so I became so hypersensitive to the messages that our girls are receiving from all forms of media about being somebody different than who God made them. And just being a woman myself, I grew up with that, but with social media, which we'll be talking about today, those messages are just amplified. And I knew that I wanted to incorporate some messages about just being your own self and really truly loving you for who you are instead of trying to be somebody different. And I mean, that's really how it was born. And, it took a while, but I finally took that first step. Our first lesson this year in Biogirls is Action Conquers Fear. And that's what I did. I approached the youth director at our church and said, I have an idea. And 2 days later, she called me back and said, let's do it. And then I was like, oh, okay, let's do it. Didn't even have a name yet. It didn't take long until we said, let's call it Biogirls, which stands for beautiful inside and out.
Wow, that's truly remarkable. And action conquering fear. That's worth the price of this webinar, which is free, but that's $1 million, item right there. So thank you for sharing that. Well, let's start to frame this conversation. We're centering around social media and self-esteem, and maybe just to start things, can you kind of frame, Missy, some of the things that have changed? I mean, for an audience that's more in the realm of being a parent or a coach or a teacher, what's different now than what we saw growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, social media is a thing. I mean, it wasn't even a thing even when I was in college, so I'm old. But I think we take a step back even further and kind of remove social media from it. And what is it that is creating this epidemic of low self-esteem in girls primarily? And that is these standards that society is setting that are so focused on three things: achievement, performance, and physical appearance. So if you take those things and think about it, think about what you see on social media. You see somebody on an amazing vacation. You see somebody whose kids just won the championship. You see somebody posting about the new boat that they got, the new job that they landed, the dream job. You're seeing these, what everyone refers to as highlight reels. Our society in general is so hyper-focused on those things that our kids are seeing that. And so now they're seeing what we as adults are valuing, and they're tying their self-worth and their social value to performance, achievement, and physical appearance. Now you add social media into the mix and it just amplifies it tenfold, because everyone, whether you know them personally or not, can see your performance, achievement, and physical appearance. So our kids now are, and it's actually a proven thing. There's this perfectionism syndrome in our young girls, where they are so focused on those three things that they then have like this imposter syndrome where they don't believe they're good enough at anything. So they're constantly comparing themselves and placing their value based on that comparison, which is really scary. They are, avoiding things because they're going to fear they'll fail or look silly. They are constantly self-criticizing themselves because they're not living up to these standards. And I often compare it to like throwing a dart at a moving bullseye, because let's face it, standards are constantly changing, right? You're never going to hit that bullseye. And when you never hit that bullseye, you're always feeling like you fail, right? So that's how self-esteem is impacted by societal standards and then amplified by social media. And so when self-esteem suffers, we know that the resulting behavior is often destructive. So things like substance abuse, risky sexual behavior, eating disorders, increased rates of depression and anxiety, and even suicide.
Well, and these are three things. I mean, performance, achievements, and physical appearance. These are things, it seems that they're so far away from thinking of these. And I think you're illuminating something, just that there's a critical issue that we're overlooking, that this happens very young, that they're looking at these three things.
Yeah.
And, because we're focused on, girls, could you tell us a little bit of the difference between boys and girls during this time frame?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I do a lot of reading on topics related to this, and the ROX Institute, so it's ROX, they're based out of Pennsylvania. They do research on this demographic of girls and put out a study last fall on the impact of COVID on our girls. And that's another discussion, but the numbers are just staggering in terms of isolation and feelings of loneliness. And I bring this up because they also studied or they also mentioned in that study that social media exacerbates these feelings of loneliness and isolation in girls. But in boys, they're spending a lot of time online, but where they're spending their time is actually gaming. And through that gaming, they're interacting and connecting with their peers. And so they actually aren't feeling the same effects that the girls are. Girls are scrolling, girls aren't connecting. So I have some stats here. A third of girls in this ROCKS report stated that they spend 6 or more hours a day on social media. 6 or more hours. Think about that. We'll talk about what they're seeing here in a second. 58% of Instagram users are female, and both Instagram and Snapchat, girls' usage beats boys' usage by double digits. And so it really is an issue within the female demographic. And the other thing I want to bring up that I found just fascinating and also very scary is that the amount of time our young people are spending on social media at night is astounding. They are feeling like they have to be connected all the time or they're going to miss out on something. And so in this book, it's called Enough as She Is by Rachel Simmons, which is a fantastic resource if you have girls, if you work with girls. Highly recommend the book. But in there, she's interviewing teenagers about their social media usage, and they say, I wake up at night and scroll through social media just to make sure I'm not missing something. So you can imagine what that does to sleep patterns. And we know that, lack of sleep then compounds any issues they're already having.
That comes to mind. I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot here with Level Up and Matto is the formation of the adolescent brain. Mm-hmm. And how incredibly delicate it is. There's a big difference between trying drugs, in your early teens and in your middle 20s. And, it's just like wearing a bike helmet. It's just something we should all know is the impacts, that happen on a developmental brain. And, hearing this, it's incredibly compelling for us to take charge as adults and find programs like Biogirls, because we do know also that once you have a thought, even if it's a negative thought, it's easier to return to that thought. So if a young girl gets this thought in her head about achievement, performance, or physical appearance not measuring up, and just playing that loop over and over mm-hmm. again, and you've really helped us, I think, to illuminate, where we need to go, which is there is a difference between boys and girls and in the specific age group to sort of target. So can you tell us a little bit more as this tape starts to play in their head over and over mm-hmm. again, how we start to move towards a different direction?
Yeah, so I think obviously there is, not everybody has a problem who uses social media or, suffers consequences as a result of social media. But there are 3 things I think that we can look for by following our own kids on social media, by being engaged with their social media behavior. Three kind of warning signs that we can look for. So girls who are using social media to control how their lives look to others. So another way of saying this is it's the new way of keeping up with the Joneses, or even one-upping the Joneses, right? So through social media, they're curating their entire feed to look like they're the smart girl, the sexy girl, the sporty girl, the whatever girl, even without having to be those things. And so they're, trying to showcase all these things that maybe they're not even. So if you identify that type of usage with social media, that is a red flag. The second being girls who are using social media to control how they physically appear to someone else. So if you think back to the 80s and even the early 90s, and even before that, there's always been this societal standard around beauty. And I think back to when I was a kid, I was subjected to these messages, maybe in the grocery store checkout line when I looked at the cover of Glamour magazine, or MTV maybe, or commercials between the Golden Girls episodes. There's maybe 100 messages a week. But now girls with social media are getting thousands of messages a day about physical appearance and what these standards are and how they should, again, be somebody other than what their genetics are made to be, taller, skinnier, should do this, should do that. Is the case of the shoulds, right? So when you're scrolling, I should. It's just taken up so many notches from what we grew up with. So if you see that kind of behavior where they're contorting their bodies to get into a certain position to look the skinniest that they could be, that is definitely a red flag. And that all comes back to affirmation, which is the third thing that we can be on the lookout for. And that is using social media to assess their social status, if you will. Again, if you think back prior to social media, things that were perception before are now quantifiable. So how many friends do you have? How many followers do you have? How many people liked your post on your new outfit? Those kind of things. There's no way to quantify that before social media. And now girls are using that as a way to gauge their social status. And so if they're constantly putting posts out looking for affirmation, that is definitely a red flag.
Wow, that's appearance and affirmation. If we're monitoring the kids in our circle that we care for, are connected to, and we start to notice these things, how do we maybe start to have a conversation and move towards guiding that in a different direction?
Yeah, I think our knee-jerk reaction as adults and parents is to talk about how bad social media is and, the things that should be instead. But I think there are a number of things that we can do. First of all, set an example. And this is outside of social media. Instead of focusing on those three things, so achievement, performance, and physical appearance, focus on the journey, the progress, the work, kind of the dirty, ugly stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but are so important in growth, right? Instead of just posting on social media about the championship, talk about a skill that was learned and, give positive praise and feedback on that. So then we're starting to separate self-esteem or self-worth from those three, physical appearance, achievement, and performance. And then that will set the example for the children that their self-worth is not based on that. So both outside of social media, but also within social media, avoid that. The second thing is set the example to put your phone down, have social media free time or, device free time. And maybe, I never like to say set rules. I mean, as parents, we should set rules, but involve the kids in developing kind of the rules of engagement with social media. And I also read, this is not my idea, but I read that actually having an alarm clock in a kid's room instead of their phone, and then having a charging station outside of their bedroom, so their phone is not with them at night, is such a positive and healthy thing for kids. So those are a couple of things. And I think digging deeper into social media is having conversations with your kids about why they use social media. How does it make them feel when they're out there? Does it create feelings of FOMO? Like, are they missing out or feel like they're missing out because of what they're seeing? The answer is yes, they should limit their time. Or this is a great tangible action item. Go through with them the accounts that they follow. And if they are creating those feelings of missing out, or maybe they're creating like these bold feelings or that create sweeping statements like, oh, I have no friends. What accounts are those that are creating those kind of negative feelings, and unfollow them. And that might be hard for kids, But you could use a strategy that we teach in Biogirls and say, what's the worst that could happen if you do unfollow? So that's a very tangible action item. Another thing, and this is for girls specifically, girls often feel like, or they believe that their online friends are happier and more successful than they are. And that especially holds true when they have a very vast network of people that maybe they don't even know very well. So they're comparing themselves to people they don't even know. And so again, like the last activity, you could go through and help your daughter identify who's somebody that you would pick up the phone and call and talk to outside of social media, or who would you invite to your birthday party? If they wouldn't invite them to their birthday party, they probably shouldn't be connected with them on social media at this age. You know, like we were talking about the maturity of their brain at this age, maybe isn't ready for that vast network of people that they're comparing themselves to. And so, you know, focusing on quality of connections versus quantity. And it's proven actually that when girls do this, they have a more balanced view of reality, because they actually know those people outside of social media and know that their life is not just that highlight reel.
Well, these are incredibly powerful. I mean, paying attention to what that our girls are following, making sure that we're monitoring their phone use during, especially bedtime. It sounds like is on the
Mhm.
rise and of concern, but laying out at least some parameters, engaging in conversation about what they're feeling with who they're following, and helping to reduce down who they follow to ensure that it's it's a positive relationship that they're feeling and positive things. And this overall feeling of sort of focusing on maybe more of the drafts and working towards something and building a skill. This is really, really helpful. And I think, Missy, too, you already just in this short time helped us to illuminate that social media is not evil, but we have to level up our skills maybe on how we deal with it as parents, so we're engaging in the positive aspects of it.
Absolutely. You know, I think one of the other important factors, especially for girls, is, well, and for all of us post-pandemic, is to encourage girls to seek connection outside of social media. You know, find activities that they enjoy, encourage them to be in person with friends, and engage in social activities outside of, scrolling a feed in their bedroom. That is, again, probably one of the most important ways to help girls see their value, rather than comparing to others.
Well, that's really good one for all of us to maybe pin to the fridge, or in the fridge of our mind, if you will, is doing an audit to just make sure we're helping to foster those real connections and not just leaving them to develop social media relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, can you walk us through a little bit? One of the things that seems to be a real highlight about Biogirls, in addition to many things, but just to pick one, is, that it's okay to fail. So, how do we go about communicating that message?
I think that comes back to that growth mindset and just giving things a try and identifying what it is that you can learn from it. People often view, well, maybe not so much anymore, but in our early days, the perception of Biogirls is that we are a running club, which we do run primarily, although we're diversifying into other activity types. But we use running as a tool. So we're non-competitive. We're not trying to develop superstar runners. We are reinforcing the skills that we're teaching throughout the lessons through running. And one of them is the fear of failure. In fact, this last Sunday night, I lead a Biogirls group on Sunday nights, and we ran 1.5 miles. And I never tell the girls how far we're going to run before we run, because they'll always have a bad attitude about it before we even start. So when we got done, we talked about the progress that we have made since night one, where we ran some short little relays in the parking lot and the girls thought those were hard. Now they were teaching accountability because the girls are supposed to do 2 to 3 workouts at home during the week to continue to grow and work towards this goal. Week 3, we ran our first mile. Some of the girls thought that was really hard. My point was when I was reviewing this was, hey, let's celebrate how far we've come. Do we run a 5K yet? No, we haven't. In fact, if we tried to run a 5K tonight, we probably wouldn't do very well. But that's what we're working towards. And, so it's those skills then that translate into trying something else that maybe they don't think they could do yet. But they understand that through some hard work, through some goal setting, celebrating the progress, those things are possible, right? And so I think it's just that action conquers fear. Just get out there and do it. And I think what social media does for all kids right now is, again, I mentioned this before, is you don't see the journey that anybody takes. You don't see all the failures along the way. You just see that pinnacle moment. And so we're trying to break that down for kids to help them understand that that's not reality. The reality is people fail all the time. And if you learn to grow from it, you can do anything.
Well, that's absolutely remarkable, and I can't even imagine the positive impact that makes throughout somebody's life when they get that lesson, and then how it impacts everybody around them. So that's incredibly positive. And since we're on the note of physical activity and the positive benefits, could you speak to a little bit more of that because of your background, both in your education and what you do with Biogirls, about just the importance of getting moving?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We see it all the time. We see it every week. In fact, some of our sessions, our sessions are built so we do large group, small group immersion, and then physical activity. But sometimes we flip flop that, and it really is remarkable to see what happens when we do the physical activity first. The moods are elevated, the concentration is better with our kids. And so I think, the benefits of physical activity are widely known, I believe, but especially in kids. So I had a pediatrician who sits on our program advisory committee call me late last fall and just say, Missy, we've got to do more. Not only the mental health is suffering because of COVID, but our kids are physically suffering. So if you think about the past year specifically and how much screen time these kids are having, and which was a necessity because of school, right? But then you think about parents who are trying to work from home, teach their kids school, and then still get in a meeting or two. The easy thing to do is put their kids in front of the TV or a device. So our kids are becoming even more sedentary than they have been in the past. And they're suffering. So it's both a mental and a physical health just issue that we're going to see coming out of COVID specifically. So, I'm definitely not an expert on those benefits, but I do know that, it helps with stress management. It helps with just mental health in general. Kids can concentrate better, and, it just really, how to say it, kids, so much focus is put right now in sports on making the team or winning the championship. And so many kids don't have the opportunity to play sports anymore, or don't feel like they can because they don't have the support to go to Minneapolis, 3 weekends a month. And, kids are being cut in 4th grade off of basketball teams. And so the opportunities just aren't there. And so that's where Biogirls comes in. And, we're just trying to make it fun. And it's amazing to see these girls when they cross the finish line accomplishing this goal. Imagine being 8 years old and running 3.1 miles. These are tiny little legs out there doing this. And, these are not runners. These are girls, and the excitement and then that sense of satisfaction that they get to carry with them after accomplishing that goal is something that really impacts them for a long time.
Well, one of the, speaking of the benefits of social media is a conversation like this can go a lot further than just a single phone call. And, for our audience, Missy, if there's a parent, or maybe a concerning coach and they've got a young girl in their life that is just, at the end of this spectrum of challenges where, there's been an awful lot of social media, a very negative mindset, and certainly some concerning signs of the track of where they're headed. What would you like them to know today?
I think I'm a big advocate for seeking out professional help. Biogirls, I always say there's a spectrum of mental health, right? And a lot of resources are poured into, post-diagnosis. We play on more of the preventive end. We are definitely not a medical service, not pretending to be at all. So we're working with girls to hopefully prevent that, the other end of the spectrum, but it happens. And I just suggest, like, don't wait. Let's break that stigma and get girls the help that they need. Reach out to, personally, we've worked with the Village and Solace Consulting or Counseling, sorry. And there's many other fantastic professionals in town. Reach out. Don't wait. If there's a red flag, get the help.
Well, and as we start to round towards the 40-minute mark here, Missy, other key action items that you think we should all know about as caring adults?
Yeah, I think I actually took this directly from that book I mentioned, Enough as She Is. I think working with our girls to understand not only how social media helps them feel, but their use of social media and what purpose it plays in their life. And so there's a checklist, and I can provide this out afterwards too, but I found it really helpful, as a parent myself, and actually for my own social media usage. Ask yourself these questions, or ask your daughter or even your son these questions. Does this post say something about myself, or am I trying to prove myself? Am I using social media to connect or compete? Does this post or the statement I'm making, is it something, or is it saying something about what I think? Or am I trying to see what others think of me? Am I using social media to be a part of something bigger or to improve my social status? And then I think the most important one, and I didn't talk too much about this, but this is something that is pretty alarming, and that is this post, am I seeking affirmation via this social media post? Am I looking for that external validation to help me feel better about myself? And if the answer is yes, don't post it. And so it's kind of like a checklist of, why am I making this social media post in the first place? And it will help girls really gauge how they're using social media and maybe use it in a more appropriate way.
Well, Missy, you've casted a very clear understanding of what the conditions are. I mean, I think a couple of the key things to understand there is that this is happening quite young, and we need to do a good job of getting our pulse on this early. Is this comparison and this, negative use of social media is starting young, and by helping to set some healthy boundaries, by getting into the conversation with them, by auditing to make sure they have relationships outside of social media, by really engaging with them through this process and unfollowing people, and making sure that they're moving towards positive self-reflection and self-esteem. This is really remarkable, and if they're in the region where they have a Biogirls chapter, certainly the elements that you laid out can be helpful to any of us that have a young daughter or a young gal in our life that we care about. Any other things that you would like to our audience to hear today?
Yeah, just what you just mentioned. I was reflecting back, even 3 to 5 years ago when we were developing curriculum, we would talk about social media, but we would talk about it in a way of internet safety, which is still really important, don't get me wrong. But many of the girls in the 2nd through 6th grade demographic weren't using social media themselves. Maybe some of our 5th and 6th graders were just getting into it, but they were aware of it. So we talk about internet safety. Whereas now, almost every girl that comes to Biogirls has a phone and is on TikTok or Instagram. So just the evolution, even in the last 3 to 5 years, has been crazy. And social media isn't going away. Like, I would never get on here and say, just delete all of their accounts, because that's not reality either. It's better to engage with our kids, have those discussions, and help them to understand that appropriate usage instead. And then the other thing I was going to mention is we are in 5 states. Biogirls is in 5 states, in many communities within those states. But if you are on the call and would like to consider Biogirls in your community, we are actively expanding. And so it is something that you could look into bringing to your community as well.
Well, Missy, I recently read a quote. It was by the chief rabbi, Jonathan Sachs of Britain, and he had said that there's a difference between hope and optimism. And optimism is the belief that things will get better. And hope is the belief that if we work together, things will get better. And so you've given us hope, that there is a strategy, there are concepts here that are practical for all of us to adopt to improve the conditions for all of the young girls in our life. And on a personal note, as a father to 2 dads, it's absolutely life-changing and life-giving to have this discussion with you. Thank you for joining us here today.
I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today. A special thank you to Missy for sharing with us about the impacts of social media and how we can promote healthy use amongst young kiddos. Also, I'd like to just let you know to join us. Our next webinar will be May 6th, and it's going to be on youth mental health after the pandemic. So Missy touched on some of these things, and we're going to go a little deeper on what the pandemic has done to youth in our community. So we'll be talking with Dakota Family Services social worker Christy Wilkie and Lucas Mitzel, and we'll discuss how we can use the lessons of the pandemic to prioritize youth mental health and better equip young people to overcome challenges. So you won't want to miss that. Check out Level Up Fargo and Maddow Foundation's Facebook pages for more information and a link to register. And until then, thanks for joining, everyone.